Hi friends, welcome back to another video. This is a follow-up to the video I posted yesterday about Foodie breaking laws with her latest grifting scam involving a child. I wanted to touch on some of the possible consequences and legal ramifications for Foodie if she does indeed catch charges for wire or charity fraud. Because she's been hopping from country to country while keeping the scam going, it can get a bit complicated because every country has their own laws about fraud and child exploitation. So please take all of this information with a grain of salt because it can get a little bit confusing, but I'll try to lay it out as simply as I possibly can. Based on international law, extradition dynamics, and cybercrime enforcement, Foodie could be facing serious legal consequences. The very first thing she could be facing is wire fraud. Wire fraud is basically a federal crime in many Western countries, Canada, the US. It basically just involves using telecommunications like the internet, phone calls, etc., to intentionally deceive someone for financial gain. So asking viewers to send money via PayPal or Super Chats for a fake charity, especially internationally, and pocketing that money, 100% constitutes wire fraud. It becomes aggravated fraud if it involves vulnerable populations like children or individuals with disabilities. And then there's the whole concept of charity fraud. So that basically means you're misrepresenting a fundraiser, you're falsely claiming the money will go to one cause, like a child's education, but when you really use it for personal gain, like hotels and food, that constitutes charity fraud. Refusing to show receipts, not providing any proof of money transferring from you to the family, and instead you go on a luxury trip in Doha, it just strengthens the case for international fraud. Now, in terms of exploitation of the child, Foodie showcased the child to generate sympathy and manipulate her viewers into donating to this quote-unquote cause. If it was done without parental consent or proof, it 100% veers into child exploitation territory. This becomes even more serious because she used the child in a live stream. She has been posting multiple photos of the child. The story about the child was not verified, and she definitely elicited a sob story to solicit the money from her viewers. Now, this could be prosecuted under laws protecting children from online exploitation or financial abuse in multiple jurisdictions across multiple countries. That's where it gets a little bit more complex. If she committed the crime in Syria, she fled to Qatar, but she's also a Canadian citizen. So now this just involves a lot of different countries. So Canada is her country of citizenship. Syria is where the fraud initially originated, although their legal system is in disarray right now due to the civil war, obviously. And then Qatar, that's where she's currently located. In terms of Syria, Syria is a non-cooperative jurisdiction for Western criminal investigation. So because she actually committed the fraud originally in Syria, it would be unlikely for the Syrian authorities to pursue her unless the scam involved Syrian citizens or affected Syria directly. Now, again, it did involve Syrian citizens. In terms of Qatar, Qatar has very strict cybercrime laws, especially around financial fraud, money laundering, and human rights. So if a complaint or Interpol red notice is issued by Canada or another country, Qatari authorities may detain her. If the Qatari authorities view her actions as using their country as a safe haven for fraud or exploiting a child on their soil via YouTube, they could act really harshly. They could freeze her accounts, they could arrest her, they could detain her, they could deport her, or extradite her. Now, talking about Canada, Canada could actually charge her under Section 3801 of the Criminal Code. If the child exploitation laws were to come into effect, that means that a Canadian had donated or a Canadian child was affected. If complaints were filed by Canadian viewers or if any kind of media coverage of this scandal escalates, the Royal Mounted Police or International Cybercrime Unit could open a file in Canada. So what about the consequences, right? If she's caught, she could get extradited or deported. Canada actually has extradition treaties with Qatar but they are a little bit complex, so I don't want to get into it too much right now. But the most likely scenario is that Qatar could deport her back to Canada for being involved in online financial deception or for violating cybercrime laws in Qatar. Because don't forget, she's still grifting in Qatar. She could face criminal charges in Canada if she's in Canada. She could face, if the fraud is over $5,000, she could face up to 14 years in prison. If she is guilty of charity fraud, there are other severe fines and jail time. If it is proven she did exploit a child, there is also additional prison time. Wire fraud, in terms of that, if she's charged by the United States, that's up to 20 years in jail if U.S. jurisdiction is invoked. Now, the only reason I mentioned the United States, because even if the U.S. wasn't directly involved, if any donations came from American citizens, U.S. authorities could theoretically pursue her, which makes things even more complicated. And that's not the only consequences she could face. She could actually face civil consequences, like a class action suit or a civil lawsuit. If enough donors come forward, she could face civil litigation for fraudulent misrepresentation, emotional distress, and breach of trust. Especially since this involves a child with disabilities, the emotional impact on donors could be used to seek punitive damages. What are punitive damages? Money. So, in terms of the investigations, any kind of digital evidence they would need, obviously YouTube chats are archived and reviewable. YouTube has copies of everything you've ever put on there. PayPal donations have sender and recipient logs. The story about the child is on video. It is all over the internet now. Everyone knows what she's done. And again, her movements from Syria to Qatar to Doha are all documented on her vlogs. The timeline is all there. Investigators could easily obtain enough digital evidence to prove the intent and the actual fraud. Now, in terms of YouTube terms of service and bans, we all know it's probably a joke. YouTube's not going to do anything right. They never do. But if they determine that she used her platform to exploit a child or to commit fraud, she could be permabanned. She could be reported to the authorities, and she could be subjected to asset seizure via her YouTube revenue, and that is going to hurt her. So, in essence of all of this that she's done, if she's caught, she could be detained in Qatar, deported to Canada, or extradited. She could face criminal charges in Canada for fraud, wire fraud, and possibly child exploitation. She could be sued civilly by donors for financial and emotional damages. She could get permanently banned from YouTube, probably PayPal, and she could end up with a criminal record and possible jail time. Does this remind you of Kuwait? Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
Oh, please. So every single thing we buy in life is going to be Sass's money? Like, I didn't know you could fund a whole renovation, traveling for a few weeks on $1,000. I can actually understand because, like, obviously after raising money for her school, I travel into like a hotel and I get that, but no, it's not. I would never in a million years ever do that. Plus, besides which, it's just not enough to fund a trip. Like, the flight was like $900. How am I going to stay at a hotel? You know, like, there's no way. Yeah. So, yeah, I did promise, but after I showed first rounder receipts, I'm like, I posted why I don't think that's a good idea. Yeah, I know, but